Alien Romulus is the new Alien movie directed by Fede Alvarez, director of Don't Breathe and the gory Evil Dead remake. I went into the film pretty much blind, aside from annoyingly knowing one spoiler that happens near the end, but aside from that, I was cautiously optimistic given that I'm a huge fan of the franchise. This review will talk about plot elements, but no major spoilers regarding deaths and whatnot. Ridley Scott's ambitious but wayward vision with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, attempting to link what should have been a remote alien terror in deep space with the origin of human life, and all sorts of kooky stuff that should have been left to a different sci fi project, has not altogether been discarded. I had to correct myself though because the easiest way to describe Alien Romulus is that it's a standalone alien movie that goes back to the stuck in a haunted house with a ghost nature of the original film. It's Don't Breathe in space. But then you remember that the movie does actually include elements from Ridley's new movies, almost all the Alien movies, in fact. I enjoyed this film. I thought it was solid, 7 out of 10. I don't think I'd watch it again though. Alien and Aliens are, of course, the runaway winners of the franchise. Everything else is a matter of taste. It's a very simple premise. A group of young workers on a moon planet are fed up with being screwed over by Weyland Yutani and seek to escape a diseased life working in the mines. So they decide to steal cryo chambers from a decommissioned company ship floating around nearby. But of course, when they arrive at the ship, all hell breaks loose. The opening half hour, 45 minutes, when it wasn't actually an alien film, were actually some of my favorite moments. The world building was neat, and I enjoyed our time on the grim Blade Runner esque moon planet. Just seeing that side of the Alien franchise, what average life is like for normal people back home, was cool to watch, as was the initial exploration of the decommissioned spacecraft. The production values of the film deserve a lot of praise. They clearly took a lot of care with how the movie would look and sound. The rugged, futuristic retro look was very much in line with Alien and Alien Isolation. The aliens themselves as well. You don't really see them in extended shots. It's reminiscent of 80s horror movies where the baddies are seen sparingly in quick close-up shots, but the xenomorphs looked good. They've probably never looked better. Again, clearly great care has been taken regarding the animatronics and practical effects. The Xenos blow Scott's CGI protomorph from Alien Covenant out of the water. In spite of the simplicity of Alien Romulus's setup, it's deliberately taken from much of what has come before. Some might want to describe it as a greatest hits version of an Alien movie, though this might be a bit unfair as Alvarez does add some of his own marks, his own additions to the lore, like facehuggers tracking you by sound and heat. The connections to previous films are done through plot elements, references, and one particular character. The references were one of the shoddiest aspects of the film. Hardcore Alien fans will notice numerous Easter eggs littered throughout the film, starting all the way with the cornbread reference early on. It feels restrained and thoughtful at first, but then there's more, and then more, and then there's too much. They shit it out all over the screen, ending with the most eye rolling of the lot when one of the characters says, "Get away from her, you bitch." And there's a dramatic pause before "you bitch," as if to give us time to dare the character not to say it, which is what I was actually doing in the theatre. The debt to previous films can also be felt in the chapters of the film. The first chunk, the first third, is very much Alien and Alien 3. Creepy, slow, eerie. Then it gets all action packed a la Aliens in the later stages, where the movie does get a bit silly and unrestrained. And then right at the end, we get a taste of Alien Resurrection. A bit of Prometheus garnished throughout as well, especially in the second half. One of the more controversial aspects of the movie is bringing Ian Holmes back as Ash. Not the actual Ash from the original, but another android with the same face. And not the actual Holmes, because he's dead. They used his likeness on a damaged synthetic that is awakened and has a small villainous appearance. It didn't look great, to be honest. It wasn't the Mummy Returns Scorpion King bad, and to all intents and purposes, it looked decent. But when you consider he didn't move much and we get a lot of close ups of it, it should have been better. The subpar CGI has this kind of uncanny valley effect that makes it look like a Snapchat filter. Honestly, it was the perfect opportunity to use an animatronic. because even if it didn't look great, you could have it melted or scratched in the previous alien attack, and that's the reason for it not looking good. Major missed opportunity there. And really, the inclusion of CGI zombie Ash was unnecessary. If anything, they could have used a new actual actor who could have given us a creepy performance as an android. The director was inspired by the game Alien Isolation, and the creepy androids in that game are one of the best things about it. It might not be the place to discuss this here, but I also felt uncomfortable from an ethical point of view seeing all this stuff done to a guy who's basically dead. A movie that comes to mind with Romulus is the 2018 reboot of Halloween. Like Romulus, Halloween was both a continuation and reboot of the original. It did its own thing, but simultaneously it had tons of Easter eggs to all the previous movies. It was made in the style of the original and was a very fun movie. But it was also a very safe movie, and Romulus also has that safe feeling of a director not wanting to swing too far for the fences lest he goes into crazy territory like Scott did. Even the last 20 minutes of the movie, some might say that's the director leaving his mark, but others will say it's straight from Alien Resurrection. It did what Prey did for the Predator films and hit the reset button, telling a simple, small scaled, back to basics story. But for the next one, I want to see some swinging. There's plenty of excellent material from the comics they can take from. Like with Halloween, you watch Romulus and think, okay, that was fun, well done, but don't do that again next time. It's a very well made movie, the first good alien film in decades, and maybe I've been affected by new films constantly trying to add tons of lore to their franchises, like Shane Black's The Predator with their super predators and weaponized autism, but I could not escape the feeling that I wanted a little more from Romulus. Maybe not even lore or story or anything, but just more shots of the Xenos, more time being hunted by the alien. I noticed a lot of quick close up shots of the xenomorph hissing that were probably shot with the props department and then edited into scenes of characters running in fear. There was a bit of disconnect between many scenes of the humans and the Xenos. Very few scenes of them both in the same shot up close and personal. The pace is really fast once it kicks off. I jumped a few times. It has scares, but weirdly, it lacked tension, even though it ticked the boxes for what should generate tension. It gets close, like the part where they have to creep past the facehuggers, or a quick shot where a guy is pinned down by a Xeno. He looks to his left and he sees a whole bunch of aliens crawling towards him. That was pretty creepy. But nothing like the unrelenting tension of seeing Ripley amble through the hive looking for Newt. I just wish there were more scenes that made me go, ugh. Even Alien 3 had the nail biting tunnel chase at the end. Resurrection had the tense underwater chase. I was surprised by how distant I was to what I was seeing on screen. I never felt a sense of dread. I want to cringe when I watch an Alien film. I want to squirm like I did when the Queen ripped Bishop in half. Instead, I was nodding in approval at the technical achievements as the movie went on. I found Alien Isolation to be much scarier. Speaking of which, it was pretty tame. I don't know where all the talk of it being such a gruesome film is coming from. There wasn't much gore, even in comparison to previous installments, and when it was there, it was fast and we cut away quickly. A bit unfortunate coming from the director of the very gory Evil Dead remake. The chestburster sequence, for example, it's probably the tamest in the series, bar the one from Alien vs. Predator. Maybe the movie could have used a few more characters, a few more expendable alien fodder, so we could have gotten some cool kills. I remember thinking that when the last guy died, well, that's it, no more alien kills. The aliens were more easily killed than the humans in this film. The cast did good, but aside from one or two guys, they weren't really too memorable. I found myself missing the likes of Hicks and Ripley, and it was actually a lesson in how important the characters are in an alien movie. I think I could have probably done without the fourth act. It was a bit wild with all the jumping, flying around, and floating acid that the characters need to avoid. It reminded me of that Ocean's 12 laser dance with Vincent Cassell. Replace the bits of the lanky Voldemort, which somehow grew 10 feet after 2 minutes, with a xenomorph villain and give it some glory. I'm not impressed by the hybrid as many people are. I would have loved for it to be something utterly hideous and grotesque. Maybe my issue is that you always feel the final girl will survive in an alien film now, and that gives the whole thing a kind of safety net feel. She did have a lot of plot armor. There was one particularly weird scene where she fell from a great height, and I momentarily thought she was done for. We were going to get an alien film and no one survived. But she ended up being gently rescued by a xenomorph tail. Maybe it's that what we see in the film we've pretty much seen before and better. Have a bit of confidence in yourself, because the new additions, the wall egg thing, for example, were interesting. I was hoping to see more kind of stuff like that, but the movie seemed more interested in reminding me of older Alien movies. As a result, Alien Romulus rather lacks its own identity. You point to every Alien film and say, that's the one where this happens, that's the one where that happens. But with Romulus, what would you say? That's the one that does the thing that the other movies did. I can moan about Prometheus as much as I want, but it tried something original, it just didn't hit the mark. Romulus doesn't take such chances, it sets the bar pretty low, but then doesn't go all out in the effectiveness, and then goes down the Prometheus route anyway, trying to have its cake and eat it. This movie gets a lot right. Practical effects, world building, production design, all on point. It could have had better pace and suspense. I liked the first half and tolerated the second. The cynic in me will, of course, cause me to tear a film like this apart in a review. Maybe the impression I've given is that I hated it, but overall it does get a thumbs up. The good outweighs the bad, and it's released at a time where quality theatre movie content is lacking, so it gets that extra bit of praise due to collective lowered expectations it probably wouldn't if it was released in the 90s. So what do you make of this movie? Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.